For me, positive disruption is all about having the courage to challenge and the courage to change. And this comes in a lot of different perspectives, so it goes from the very personal right through to your work life and through to, I think, broader society and business. What I want to focus on today is combining innovation through social and business models. All too often, the status quo provides and offers a very easy security and comfort that prevents challenging new ideas and challenging the way in which previous practices and problems have been approached. Looking at this today, I want to sort of look at how we can use the business models and models that are developed and perfected in the business world through into social and community initiatives. Applying business models to social and community fora is not new. Clever and very well-meaning people have been doing that for generations. My proposition is that we can be doing it more broadly and more deeply. And that's what I want to explore today. I want to explore that by using a personal story. I didn't realise at the time I was involving myself in positive disruption. I'd never heard of that. Probably what I was doing was being generally disruptive, but perhaps positive, maybe it turned out that way. The story is over a decade ago. In fact, it's at the end of the last century, which does make me feel about as old as Methuselah and much older than a lot of you, but back then I wasn't as old. But it was last century, and that will give you a bit of a flavour for some of the features of how this innovation explored itself, and I think did test things at the time, particularly the digital world that we had back then. So at that time, in the very late 90s, I met a group of women who were creating a drop-in day centre for women and women with children in crisis. They were doing that by using some existing models in terms of practices for those sorts of environments and partnering with existing charities. They were also bringing to the initiative new business concepts, particularly in relation to access to premises and in the way in which their services were going to be delivered to what they saw as clients rather than sort of people who'd become a victim of the system. I met them and I was, and still am, a lawyer, and thought, oh, well, I'll jump in, I'll help provide some legal services. And in so doing, I ended up, without knowing it, setting up the first legal model of its kind in that sort of a drop-in environment. I'll sort of explore how that went. So it was very much tailored to the needs of those clients and the environment of the centre. So back then, in the old medieval world, it wasn't really very intuitive to move business infrastructure. Particularly, I was at a very old established, in fact one of the oldest established law firms at the time. Law firms have infrastructure in their place where they are. It's very important for the structure that people come to them, and the infrastructure is sort of sitting there waiting for them to provide the service. That wasn't obviously going to work in this situation. We were taking the service to the client and tailoring it to them. So I would lug out computers, books, even with real pages and backs and not digital ones. Very rudimentary internet connections, so plugging things into phone lines. And some of you may not even know that's how it used to happen. There was no tablets or internet. That was all very, very much in the future. So what that was really all about was trying to access some basic information and trying to feed into some very basic sorts of services for the clients. It was a really challenging model at the time for the big bricks and mortar law firm that I was at to get their head around moving all this stuff from one place to the other in order to provide this service. And it was challenging for the centre as well to set up spaces and work out how we were going to be able to run that when we were just lugging things back and forward. So the clinic was only operating about a half a day a week. The travel time and getting all of the gear together was probably taking up exactly equal to the eventual clinic time. But it did sort of show to me at the time that If you do challenge an existing model, in that case the real bricks and mortar sort of model, and take on whatever the new sorts of innovations in that sense, particularly the digital sort of world of innovation that was really just starting, you can sort of access much broader and exciting opportunities. It also encouraged me, or certainly gave me an understanding that having really good luggage and good walking shoes was also going to help in just getting some little things sorted. Something else that was really challenging in that example was the model of having clients come in for appointments. Again, it's a really basic thing in the standard sort of world of that type of service provision. For those ladies who are in that centre, the whole concept of appointment times, making appointments, keeping appointments, in the sort of crisis that they were all dealing with in their lives at that time, was really, in a lot of cases, an additional burden, but also just something that was incapable in a lot of cases of them getting really to commit to. So it was really about establishing a pattern. So saying that people will be, or in fact one person, me, will be at the clinic every Tuesday afternoon from this time to this time. And the appointment sort of setting became very flexible. So there's a little bit of a message to me there in just sort of challenging a bit of the sort of fitting into the way in which sort of fairly rigid business models worked. It was also almost impossible to get access to core materials or supporting documentation, again, because of the circumstances that the women were in at the time. And again, that challenged me to sort of work through and learn that, you know, there's easy paths to get to things, and if everything, you know, is delivered in a context in which, you know, you would usually expect it, then the path you follow is pretty clear. Those paths can often become not only the clear path, but the only path. So it's really about challenging yourself and thinking about how you can move around that path to get to the same ultimate solution, or a better one that you would have been able to with the initial sort of core material. And the other sort of challenging thing I found about that was in terms of outcomes. So again, I was approaching it initially very much on a basis of solving some pretty simple legal needs or complex legal needs, but whatever it was a pretty sort of blinkered, narrowed focus in terms of provision of a legal service. What actually eventuated was much more about gaining trust, helping people navigate through just some tricky situations, filling in forms, making phone calls. So it was really about accepting the fact that, you know, you've got an idea, you've embarked on something that is a challenging sort of a course, but you need to be very nimble and accepting of the fact that things will change as that goes and develops, and might take you to a place that gives you a much better result and a more comfortable result for everyone and going forward. So as I said, that model, whilst it's nothing new to combine business models with charitable, community or social sort of models, that was the first clinic of its type. Again, I didn't know that at the time, and perhaps that would have been in itself a barrier to my taking that journey. It's now the model for over a dozen centres that operate through the country that have come into existence over the last dozen or so years. So it has had a bit of a positively disruptive impact in terms of the way that model is delivered, but certainly in terms of the way I think of things. I think it's then a challenge to take that more broadly. So the concept of combining business model and business ingenuity and thinking with social and community problems, again, it's not new, but there's a deeper sort of approach that we can take to it. It's already being applied in housing sorts of situations where we have very innovative community housing programs that are developing, the use of social impact bonds for social infrastructure development, and certainly microfinance sorts of organisations where they're developing financial literacy and providing finance to people in models that traditional lenders wouldn't be able to. What I see as the challenge and the impact of positive disruption to come out of something like today is to encourage more broad thinking and more deep thinking of combining other sorts of ways in which the business world can influence and impact on the social and community world. It all comes down to individuals. Nothing happens in a vacuum or in a conglomerate of either business or a community sector. Individuals have to make that happen and have those ideas and then advance them. So it is the courage to challenge the existing status quo and those ideas that are built around it, and the courage to implement change, knowing that it may not always succeed, but to be nimble and focused enough to be able to shift and change to get a better outcome for everybody. Thanks.